Welcome, curious friends, to Extraordinary Anthropology. In my last video, I mentioned the possibility of exploring the physiology and neurology of mediums. Today, I decided to delve into this topic and expand the discussion to include spiritual practices from nuns and monks to shamans and mediums. For simplicity, I use the term spirit specialist as a catch-all for individuals or groups culturally recognized as having an unusually close relationship with spirits and/or the spirit world. The relationships may be voluntary or involuntary, stemming from a personal decision, a spiritual calling, or a combination of the two. Spirit specialists are typically viewed as conduits for their culture's interaction with spirits. Every culture has spirit specialists, though their rituals, method, and motivations vary greatly. From the early days of anthropology, scholars like E.B. Tylor have been fascinated by how cultures perceive spirits and spirit specialists. Participant observation revealed that these individuals often enter what appear to be seizures, but we now know that they are altered states of consciousness, which professionals abbreviate as ASC for ease. ASC ranges from mild staring or incoherent speech to muscle contractions or loss of consciousness. Similarities between these states and mental illnesses such as schizophrenia led some mid-20th century anthropologists and medical professionals to suggest that shamans suffer from mental pathologies like schizophrenia or epilepsy. However, other anthropologists quickly countered, emphasizing that shamans and mediums often have control over their altered states, suggesting a deliberate rather than pathological mechanism. Indeed, many spirit specialists lead socially well-adjusted, normal lives, challenging the notion that their practices stem from brain dysfunction. My colleague, Napoleon Chagnon, a renowned anthropologist and member of the National Academy of Sciences, conducted extensive fieldwork with the Yanomamo people of Venezuela and Brazil from the 1960s through the 1990s. His film Magical Death brought significant attention to shamanism, a subject he understood deeply due to his immersion research approach. Chagnon practiced participant observation, which included engaging directly with the customs and practices of the Yanomamo. Chagnon took hallucinogenic snuff powder known as ebenine and completed the other rituals that would attract Yanomamo spirits to him. Reflecting on this experience, he described his encounter with possession by the Hekara spirits. To quote him, "My arms seemed light and began moving almost of their own accord, rhythmically up and down at my sides, and I called to hot and meat hungry Hekara and asked them to come into my chest and dwell within me. I felt great power and confidence, and sang louder and louder, and pranced and danced in ever more complex patterns. I took up arrows and manipulated them as I had seen shamans manipulate them, striking out magical blows, searching the horizon for Hekara, singing and singing and singing. Others joined me, and still others hid the machete and bows, for I announced that the strongest dwelt within my chest and directed my actions, and all knew that he caused men to be violent. We pranced together and communed with the spirits." End of quote. By the late 1950s and 1960s, researchers sought to understand how common ACS practices were across cultures and began analyzing them from psychological perspectives. Notably, Erica Bourguignon was among the first American-trained anthropologists to systematically study spirit possession and trance states. She analyzed 488 indigenous societies and found that 90% of them had rituals involving ACS to communicate with ancestors or spirits. Bourguignon concluded that ACS were not pathological but fundamental to many religious practices. One of Bourguignon's students, Felicitas Goodman, expanded this research. Goodman studied glossolalia, speaking in tongues, in Pentecostal communities in Mexico and found that glossolalia exhibited definable linguistic patterns, including specific rhythms and intonations. She argued these universal patterns arose from neurological changes during possession trance. In her book, How About Demons?, Goodman uses a soul theory analogy, comparing the human body to a car. In voluntary possession, the individual permits another soul to take the wheel, while in involuntary possession, a person's own soul may be forcibly sidelined. Mediums rely on rituals, prayers, songs, smudging, and/or drumming to invite specific spirits into their bodies, emphasizing the importance of identifying benevolent spirits and avoiding malevolent ones. I hope you find this as fascinating as I do. Fliss Goodman described the process of ritual invitation, emphasizing the importance of avoiding malevolent spirits and carefully selecting the right spirit. Goodman identified numerous ways people attracted the right spirit, including prayers, songs, and the use of instruments like rattles or drum. These practices act as tools to help the spirit specialist find the spirit key that unlocks the door to the spirit's presence. A spirit cannot enter the vehicle of the human body until this intricate key and fingerprint are in place. Likewise, a ritual is used to close the door that allowed the spirit to enter, and thus to remove the spirit. Again, the inability to close the door is one of the differences between voluntary and involuntary possession. Bourguignon and Goodman observed that mediums must train visiting spirits to interact gently with their bodies. Often they will reward the spirit with tobacco or alcohol, things spirits cross-culturally love. Spirits may initially cause discomfort, such as muscle contractions, but over time, mediums learn to negotiate these interactions. This process demonstrates the skill and practice involved in mediumship and counters early assumption of pathology. More recent studies support these findings. Perez et al. Examined Brazilian psychographers, mediums who perform automatic writing while in ASC. Using neuroimaging, they found that the psychographers had reduced activity in brain regions associated with conscious writing, such as the frontal lobes, left hippocampus, and the right superior temporal gyrus. Let me stress, this study shows that they are not consciously writing. In other words, they are not using the same part of the brain as you or I do when we're normally writing. In fact, some researchers wonder how they can write with the writing centers of the brain turned off. Do you find this as fascinating as I do? This is so cool. Perez et al.'s study also contrasts with studies of monks and nuns whose frontal lobes primarily showed increased activity during prayer. Despite these differences, these psychographers were socially and mentally healthy, further dispelling myths about mental illness in spirit specialists. Additionally, other researchers like Johnson et al. Have found that prayer and meditation causes a loss of the sense of self or increased selflessness associated with reduced activity in the right hemisphere/right parietal lobe. Stanley Krippner, a prominent psychologist, has also studied Brazilian mediums in traditions like Candomblé, Umbanda, and Kardecimo. He found that Brazilian mediums primarily experience their call to heal through three main pathways: vision, dreams, and spontaneous spirit incorporation. Visions, frequently mentioned by the mediums, likely refer to the images perceived in the mind's eye during trance states, though this interpretation is not fully clarified in the article. Regardless, Krippner's research revealed unique physiological and neurological dynamics during possession trance. Brazilian religions of Candomblé, Umbanda, and Kardecimo have deep historic roots and embody complex cultural dynamics, with spirit mediumship playing a central role in their rituals. As part of his research, Krippner and his colleagues interviewed 40 mediums, conducted physiological experiments on 2 of them, and in many cases performed psychological assessments of the mediums. The participants in their study were evaluated using the Dissociated Experience Scale to measure dissociation, commonly referred to as trance, and the Telegene Absorption Scale to assess their capacity for absorption. For example, mediums exhibited high dissociation scores but average absorption levels, indicating that they remained aware of their surroundings even as they entered into trance. Krippner also noted incongruence between the central and peripheral nervous system in these mediums, which may explain extraordinary feats like the resistance to pain, a phenomenon often associated with shamans. Shamans frequently and safely put their hands in boiling water or pick up boiling pots of water with their bare hands. Additional studies like those by Kauai et al. Have shown that shamanic trances differ neurologically from epileptic states, reinforcing the idea that ASC are not pathological. Modern cognitive science continues to explore the brain's behavior during these states, but much remains to be understood. These findings underscore the complexity of mediumship and its relevance for further study. As Krippner concluded, Brazilian mediums and their practices are invaluable for understanding human consciousness, altered states of consciousness, indigenous health practices, and psychophysiological dynamics. Importantly, these studies affirm that medium shamans are typically healthy, socially integrated individuals, challenging outdated perceptions of pathology. The more we study spirit specialists, the more we uncover the brain's extraordinary capabilities and the mysteries of human consciousness. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you'd like a video about shamanic initiation or other related topics, please let me know in the comments. Have a good day or evening wherever you are.